Welcome to the deep dive.
Okay, so you've sent us this really detailed look at legal and compliance documentation. We're focusing on registered religious charities, specifically thinking about mosques, but it applies more broadly across Canada. Places like Ontario, Alberta, BC are specifically mentioned here.
Yeah, that information overload is definitely a thing. Look, running a charity, it's rewarding work, but keeping up with compliance, both the Federal Income Tax Act and all those different provincial nonprofit laws, that's tough.
It really is.
So our goal today, our mission, is pretty straightforward. We're using this legal checklist you sent, boiling it down to the 7, absolutely critical types of documents you have to maintain.
And this isn't just busy work, right? This is fundamental.
It's the difference, really, between keeping your doors open and potentially losing your charitable status altogether. It's about stability. Exactly. It's not a one-and-done filing. It's about building and maintaining a solid legal foundation. If that foundation has cracks, if the paperwork isn't kept up, well, the consequences can be severe. We're talking big penalties, maybe even having to shut down services.
Yeah, dire is the word. So this deep dive, it's really about ensuring that community service can continue sustainably.
So how should we structure this? Make it easy to follow.
Let's think about it in phases. First, how does the organization even come into being? Existence and registration. Second, how does it run itself? Internal operations, money. And third, what does it actually do? Service delivery and ongoing compliance.
Sounds good. Let's start at the very beginning then, proving you legally exist. Category 1, Incorporation Documents. Seems like there are two main ways to go here, federal or provincial.
That's the first big choice. If you go federal, you're usually under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, the CNCA. This gives you kind of national scope. And the key documents there are your certificate of incorporation, that's the official proof you exist, then the Articles of Incorporation, and your corporate bylaws.
Right. And people sometimes mix up the articles and the bylaws. Can we just quickly clarify that difference? Because legally, it seems pretty important.
Absolutely. Think of the Articles of Incorporation like your organization's constitution. They state the really fundamental stuff. Your core purpose, your official name, the overall mission, the big why.
Okay, but why?
The corporate bylaws, though, they're more like the operational rule book, the how. They get into the details, how many directors on the board, how often you need to meet, voting procedures, that kind of thing.
So changing the mission means amending the articles, but changing meeting rules means amending the bylaws.
Exactly. Different levels of governance.
Now, what if an organization goes the provincial route? I imagine that's common for groups really focused on one area, one province. You mentioned Ontario's ONCA, the Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. How different do things look under, say, the BC Societies Act or Alberta's Societies Act?
Well, the basic principles are similar. You still need to define your mission and your rules. But the provincial acts, they often have very specific requirements about things like annual filings, members' rights, and especially transparency rules.
So local flavor matters.
It really does. If your main operations are in Vancouver, you need to be fluent in the BC Societies Act. If you then open a second location, maybe in Calgary, you suddenly need to understand Alberta's Act 2 and how it applies there. It's about specific local compliance.
Okay, that makes sense. So you've got your structure sorted. That leads right into Category 2.
Right.
Your official standing with the government, specifically the Canada Revenue Agency, CRA. Your charity registration documents.
Yes. This is crucial for tax-exempt status. You absolutely need that charity registration number and the official confirmation letter from the CRA saying, yes, you are a registered charity.
But the ongoing piece, the one that seems to cause the most stress, is that annual filing.
The T3010 Registered Charity Information Return.
Yes.
Yes, that's the big one.
We hear about the T3010 constantly. But let's be real. For a smaller mosque or community group, if they make a mistake on one line, maybe misallocate something small. How serious is that? Does it immediately mean trouble?
It's probably the single biggest compliance risk factor, honestly. The T3010 is your public declaration. It shows your finances, where the money went, what activities you ran, any discrepancies there, especially around how funds are split between actual charitable work and, say, administration costs.
Yeah.
That can absolutely trigger a CRA audit.
So it's the annual checkup?
It's the annual test, yeah. Proving you're using that tax-exempt status correctly. Getting the T3010 right isn't optional. It's fundamentally necessary.
Okay. Existence and registration are covered. Now, let's move inside the organization. The day-to-day running. Category 3. Board meeting records. You said this is about internal accountability.
Exactly. The minutes are key. They show the board is actually doing its job, fulfilling its fiduciary duty, and it's not just about listing who showed up.
Right. It needs substance.
The minutes have to be detailed. They need to record specific decisions, especially on significant financial matters, approving new programs, canceling old ones, and critically, any changes to the bylaws or major policies need to be documented as discussed and voted on.
I can see why regulators, especially under those provincial acts like ONCA we mentioned, would want to see these. It proves the charity is following its own rules.
Precisely. If there's ever an issue, an investigation, they aren't going to just take someone's word for what happened in a meeting. They want the documented proof, the paper trail.
And good governance relies heavily on Category 4, financial records. This seems like an area needing real precision. The CRA wants more than just seeing bank statements, right?
Oh, absolutely. You definitely need your monthly bank statements, and they need to be reconciled. But the really critical document here is the annual financial statements.
The big year-end report.
Yeah. And depending on the charity's size, these often need to be prepared by a professional accountant. For larger organizations, a formal audit might even be legally required.
You gave a really concrete example in the sort of materials about the level of detail needed. Can you share that? It highlights the required standard.
Sure. It's about showing that professional review and where it happened. So imagine a document titled 2023 Annual Report for XYZ Mosque, reviewed by John Doe CPA, Calgary AB.
Okay, very specific.
That specificity matters. Including the CPA's name and location tells any regulator, like the CRA or a provincial body, that these numbers have been professionally vetted according to Canadian standards, specifically meeting the rules for a charity operating in this case, Alberta.
And part of finance is income, which means donation receipts. This seems like another potential pitfall.
It is. If you issue receipts, you have to be meticulous. The format has to be CRA approved. You absolutely must include the charity's full name, the official CRA registration number. Getting that wrong doesn't just look unprofessional.
It affects a donor, right?
Exactly. It could jeopardize their tax deduction, and that directly impacts people's willingness to donate again. So it hits future support. Accuracy here is vital for community trust and funding.
Okay, let's pivot slightly. We've covered governance and finance. What about the people and the physical assets, the things that actually deliver the service? Let's start with Category 5, employment and volunteer records.
Right. This covers both compliance and, frankly, liability management. For paid staff, you need the standard things. Employment contracts, all the required CRA payroll records, T4s, withholdings, all of that.
Standard HR stuff.
Pretty much. But for community organizations, especially those working with youth or vulnerable people, there's a huge focus on risk mitigation with volunteers, too.
You mean background checks?
That's the crucial piece. You must keep records showing you've done police background checks, vulnerable sector checks, usually for all volunteers and staff who interact with children or vulnerable adults. This isn't just bureaucratic, it's fundamental safety.
Protecting the people you serve.
And protecting the organization. Failure to document these checks, that opens the charity up to enormous liability if something were to happen.
Okay, moving to physical assets. Category 6, property and lease agreements. The actual place where the community gathers, if the organization owns its building.
Then the absolute proof of ownership is required. The property title deeds.
And you had another specific example for this, showing the level of detail needed.
Yes, again, precision is key. If you own the property, the document needs to look something like this. Title deed, hashtag 45678 for 123 Mosque Street, Toronto, INN. That specific legal identifier for that specific property registered in the organization's name.
And why is that level of detail so essential?
Well, it's fundamental for everything from getting a mortgage for renovations to defending ownership if there's ever a dispute. It's the ultimate proof. And if you don't own, if you rent or lease space,
then you need the lease agreement itself.
Detailed lease agreements, yeah. Specifying terms, renewal options, responsibilities, just as critical.
And related to property, you also need insurance policies.
Absolutely essential. Comprehensive liability insurance, specifically covering the kinds of activities the congregation engages in, daily prayers, classes, community events, maybe even bazaars or food drives. You need coverage for potential accidents or incidents.
Right. Covers the organization if something goes wrong on the premises.
Okay, so that brings us to the final category, number 7. And this one ties everything back to the charity's purpose: program and service records.
This is about proving you're actually doing the charitable work you said you would.
Precisely. The CRA needs ongoing evidence that the organization is fulfilling its registered charitable objects. It's not enough to just exist and manage money well. You have to show the mission in action.
So what kind of documents prove that? It's not just financial then.
No, it's operational proof. We're talking about things like program proposals and reports. These should outline clear objectives, what are you trying to achieve, and then report on the outcomes, what actually happened.
Can you give an example here too?
Sure. Let's say a mosque wants to run educational programs. They should have a document like 2024 Summer Camp Proposal for Youth Engagement. That proposal is the plan. Then, afterward, there should be a report detailing attendance, activities, maybe even feedback received.
So the proposal sets the intent, the report proves execution.
Exactly. And you need supporting data, too. Things like attendance logs are surprisingly important for prayer sessions, classes, even tracking participation in charity drives. If you partner with other groups, you need partnership agreements or memorandums of understanding, MOUs.
It sounds like these records connect the money spent, which we talked about in financial records, to the actual services being delivered. Category 4 links to Category 7.
That's a perfect way to put it. It closes the loop, shows the resources were used for the stated charitable purpose.
Okay, we've laid out the 7 critical categories. Now let's talk about staying on top of all this. Proactive compliance. What's the best way for organizations to make sure these documents are always in order, always up to date?
Well, the first step is not waiting for the government to ask. You need regular audits and reviews.
Internal ones.
Yes, at minimum, internal reviews should happen annually. Use a checklist like the one we've based this discussion on. Make sure Category 4, the financials, aligns perfectly with Category 7, the program activities. Are the numbers matching the narrative?
And professional advice seems key too, especially with those varying provincial laws like ONCA or the BC Act.
It's not really a luxury, is it? For complex legal or accounting questions, especially navigating provincial specifics, getting professional advice is just, well, it's a necessary cost of doing business properly and safely.
And managing all this paper, or digital paper, seems like a challenge.
Which is why digital record keeping is basically standard practice now. Using secure, maybe cloud-based systems, it's no longer just nice to have.
Especially for larger organizations.
Definitely. Think about an organization in a big province like Alberta, maybe with multiple locations or branches, trying to manage physical records across different sites. It's a nightmare. Digital systems provide consistency, accessibility, and better security if done right.
Before we wrap up, let's touch on a definition. We've been talking about legal documents. What actually constitutes a legal document in Canada, broadly speaking?
Good question. Generally, it's an official paper or digital equivalent that creates, changes, or ends legal rights or duties. It usually requires formal elements like signatures, maybe witnessing or notarization. Think contracts, property titles like we discussed, government-issued certificates.
Okay, and maybe the ultimate real-life example of meeting a whole suite of these is when an organization undertakes a major project, like building something new.
Oh, absolutely. Let's use the example of constructing a brand new mosque facility within a Canadian city or town. The sheer number of permits and legal documents required is a perfect illustration of how all these compliance threads come together.
Walk us through that. What does that permit process actually look like? It sounds complex.
It is, and it's sequential. First, you typically need a zoning permit or variance. You have to prove that the municipality's rules even allow a religious building on that specific piece of land. Sometimes you need an exception, a variance.
Okay, step 1. Is it allowed here?
Step 2 is often site plan approval. This gets into the specifics. The building design, landscaping, parking, traffic flow, drainage. The municipality has to approve the whole layout.
Lots of details.
Then, once the overall plan is okayed, you apply for the actual building permit. This allows you to start construction based on detailed architectural and engineering drawings that meet the building code. These are all distinct legal approvals, separate documents.
And construction happens. What's the final hurdle before the community can actually use the new building? The absolute last piece of paper needed.
The occupancy permit. This is the municipality's final sign-off. It certifies that the construction is finished, it passed all inspections, it's safe, and it complies with all the codes and approved plans. You cannot legally open the doors to the public without that occupancy permit in hand.
Wow. So that final permit really represents the culmination of proving existence, governance, safety, everything we've discussed.
In many ways, yes. It shows the organization navigated the entire legal and regulatory landscape successfully for that project.
Okay. This has been Incredibly thorough.
So if we synthesize this whole deep dive, it boils down to this. Proper, carefully maintained documentation isn't just red tape. It is the absolute backbone of any Canadian charity. It's what ensures compliance with the Income Tax Act, builds and maintains community trust, and honestly, it's fundamental for long-term survival and growth.
These 7 categories really are critical assets, not just chores.
Exactly. From the foundational articles of incorporation right through to those detailed program reports showing your impact. It's all part of the same essential structure.
That brings us perfectly to our final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. We've established that tax-exempt status hinges on documenting charitable activity through things like those attendance logs and program proposals we discussed. So here's the question. As community needs inevitably change and evolve over time, how does the definition of charitable purpose keep pace?
That's interesting.
The legal definitions in the Income Tax Act or provincial statutes can be quite fixed, quite static, but the documented needs and demands from the community may be for more youth outreach, specific social services. Things that show up in those program reports are dynamic. They shift. So how does that tension between relatively static law and evolving documented community needs play out? That's something to think about for the future of charity law and practice in Canada.
A very relevant question indeed. Keep that thought with you, and until next time, keep digging deep.